Okay. There were two questions that were asked by two different students in the classes, and I think I'll address them because both of them have importance in their own right. I think we can make a fairly short presentation of the ideas. The first question was asked by Dennis, actually, who couldn't come on tonight, or at least he didn't come on yet, but you can get the recording. So he asked like this, he said like this: I've heard several rabbis say God looked into the Torah and created the world. So the question is Torah more than just the first 5 books of the Hebrew scriptures, or is it something else? It seems that the Torah existed before the creation of the world. That is correct. The Torah existed before the creation of the world. Now, do not make the mistake that the Torah that was given to Moses on Mount Sinai was the first manifestation of Torah. It wasn't. The Torah already been written, so to speak, up above, up in heaven. In fact, the sages explain that Alpaim Shana Kadma Torah L'Olam, that the Torah preceded the world by 2,000 years. Now you might ask the question, and it's a valid question, what do you mean it preceded the world 2,000 years? By 2,000 years, didn't time begin with creation? And in fact, it did. Time began with the creation. So what does it mean? It doesn't mean it's not meant to be taken literally. It is meant that the Torah preceded the world by 2,000, the word Shana. Let me just share a screen here and explain to you what I mean. 1 second, why is it not sharing screen? Here we go. Share screen whiteboard. Okay, here we go. The word Shana in Hebrew, which is spelled Shin Nun Hey, is related to the word, that's the word for year, is related to the word Shinui. Shinui means change. So the way the rabbis explain this is that there was 2,000 levels of change before the world was created. In other words, there were 2,000 levels of descent from the very highest levels, from the level of the Torah as it is, so to speak, in God's mind, to the world that was created from the Torah. Let's put it like this. The Zohar says as follows, that the Torah was the blueprint. It was the, it's called the Difteraot. Difteraot means the, like the plans, the blueprint plans that an architect draws up for the builder. So the builder goes according to those plans. So the Torah was the blueprint for the creation of the world. But in order for the world to be created, that blueprint had to be brought down 2,000 levels, 2,000 descents for that, 2,000 shinuim, 2,000 changes before the Torah could actually, before the world could actually exist. Now, it's meant on a deeper level as well, because not the purpose of Torah is essentially not to create the world. The world is only a means by which we can fulfill the divine purpose of creation. That's why there's a world, in order to fulfill the divine purpose. What's the purpose of creation? The purpose of the creation was that for whatever reason, and this is going to relate to the second question as well, for whatever reason, God wanted it to be that the world would be his dwelling place, a dwelling place for godliness. What's the idea? The word olam, as I've explained many times, is from the same word as he'elem. He'elem means concealment. The world is 2,000 levels of concealment below the revelation of the Torah as it is in God's mind. 2,000 levels of concealment. Now, what do we mean by 2,000 levels of concealment? There's a tremendous descent from one level to the next. And you can imagine that 2,000 levels down, 2,000 gradations down, it's a completely different entity. In other words, the Torah, as it descends to create the world, is very distant, although it's a reflection of, but it's a reflection of a reflection of a reflection of a reflection 2,000 times, 2,000 levels down, in order to create a physical world. But that's what God wanted. For whatever reason, that's what he wanted. If anyone wants to look up this concept more, it is called Nit'ava HaKadosh Baruch Hu Liyos V'Dira B'Tachtonim. God wanted, he desired a dwelling place in the lower worlds. You can see this if you look in the work called Tanya chapter 36 explains this at length, and what the 36 following explains what the idea of God's desire for a physical world was. In a world which is completely a state of darkness, essentially, he wanted there to be the revelation of the highest level of divine light. In the lowest possible level should be the revelation of the highest possible level. That was what the giving of the Torah was all about. And it is our job, so to speak, it's our duty, it's our privilege, it's essentially to be able to bring this about. In other words, to be able to bring about the idea that the dwelling place of the Almighty is, in a sense, created by us. We make a dwelling place for God. So therefore, excuse me, when we talk about the Torah Keduma, the primordial Torah, we talk about the Torah as it is 2,000 levels up in God's mind. I can give you an analogy for this, and it's actually an analogy which speaks about analogies. It says that King Solomon, Shlomo Amalek, King Solomon, gave for every explanation, for every idea that he wanted to express, he gave 3,000 analogies. Now, you could think that these were 3,000 different analogies all to explain the same thing, but it doesn't work in parallel structure. It works in top to bottom structure. What do I mean by that? In other words, in order to explain a concept, so the concept was so deep and so lofty, so transcendent in King Solomon's mind that, just one second, sorry. It was so transcendent in his mind that the only way he could bring it down was by giving some kind of a parable. But in order to explain that parable was for the minds of everybody else still too far away, right? So he gave a parable for the parable, and then a parable for the parable for the parable. 3,000 Masholim, 3,000 parables in order to explain a concept. So obviously, starting from the bottom, the lowest parable, the 3,000th parable, one had to work one's way up to the initial concept. The same thing essentially applies over here, that the Torah Hagduma, the primordial Torah, the way it is in God's mind, is the essence of the Torah. It's the essence of the Torah is from the word teaching, or ra'ah. It means to teach, the teachings. So the divine teachings, the way they are in God's mind, are way beyond what we could understand in a simple sense. We have to start with the simple and then move our way upwards to deeper and deeper levels of understanding. The lowest level, when God had said that God looked into the Torah and he created the world, that's actually the lowest level of the Torah, because the Torah is there not to create the world, but the Torah is there, so to speak, in order to reveal godliness. And the godliness that's revealed in the creation of the world is minimal. Whereas the godliness that is revealed in the inner dimensions of the Torah is much, much greater than that. And that's why people study Torah to such an extent in order to understand deeper and deeper into the depths of the Torah, to the extent that the mind of someone who is essentially someone who's a tzaddik. Tzaddik means a righteous, holy person. if he manages to achieve it, his mind becomes absorbed completely in the divine mind, so to speak. His mind becomes absorbed in the Torah Keduma, in the primordial Torah, and he understands things from a completely different perspective. He doesn't understand things in terms of the running of the world, the politics of the world, and so on. He sees things from a much greater depth, until the greatest of all the tzaddikim, the Moses essentially, his mind was at one with the Torah, but only at the time of his passing. At the time of his passing, he passed away on Har Nevo, on the what was called Mount Nebo or Mountain Nevo. That was the mountain on which he passed away. But the sages, and the Zohar in particular, the sages explain that this was Har, the mountain, Shenun Bo, that the 50th gate of understanding was opened up to Moses at the time of his passing, right? At the time, until that point in time, he had only reached 49 gates of understanding. At the time of his passing, he reached the 50th gate, and therefore he no longer belonged in the world. His mind was at one with the mind of the divine, and therefore it was not possible for him to continue living in this world as a physical body. Okay, that was the first question. The second question had to do with the concept of Amalek. Amalek, the Amalekites, Amalek was a nation that had no reason to do what they did. What they did was, when the Israelites were on their way up from Egypt, they were on their way to the land of Israel, which was reasonably far away from the land of Amalek, from the Amalekite land. And when they asked the Amalekites permission to go through their territory, to go to the land of Israel, the Amalekites refused. So they went a longer path. But not only did the Amalekites refuse, they planned and they did attack them for absolutely no reason. The Israelites had already turned aside and they were going to go a longer way around, and they were attacked by Amalek. Now, Amalek represents a number of different things. The first thing that he represents is essentially the concept of deep hatred, baseless hatred, hatred for the sake of hatred. In other words, there was no reason for him to do what he did. There's no reason for the Amalekites right throughout the generations, to bear the hatred that they have in their hearts. There's no reason for it. It's just it's baseless. So baseless hatred, that's one of the concepts of Amalek. That we can understand easily enough. But there's a deeper concept of Amalek, which is related to the idea of the gematria, the numerical value of the word Amalek is the same gematria, the same numerical value as the word Sofek, meaning doubts. Amalek is that power that sows doubt into everything, right? He sows doubt. Well, I'm not sure. Well, maybe yeah, maybe no. That kind of doubting idea is the klippa, is the impure shell of what Amalek is about. But it goes even deeper than that. The concept of Amalek is corresponds to da'at of klippa. I should have gotten this before, but I didn't. So let me just see here. We got here we go. Let me share the screen with you. Here. As you can see, this is a chart of the Sfirot. Keter being the highest Sfirah, and then there's Chochmah and Bina. Now, when we count Keter, we don't count Da'at. When we count Da'at, we don't count Keter, because there's only 10 Sfirot. So, there's Keter, Chochmah, Bina, Da'at, and then it goes Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. Now, what's the when do we yes count Da'at and when do we not count Da'at? Well, we count Da'at when we're talking about the influence of Da'at on the lower Sfirot. It is the channel whereby Chochmah and Bina, and in fact Keter, pour their influence into the lower Sfirot. That is called Da'at of Kedusha, the Da'at of holiness. Da'at really means, the translation of Da'at in modern Hebrew is knowledge. But knowledge is incorrect. It's an incorrect translation. Yes, it also means knowledge, but it means much more than that. It means focus, concentration, intense awareness, intense consciousness of something. So the concept of that is to focus Chokhmah and Bina on the rest of the Sfirot, to channel Chokhmah and Bina into the rest of the Sfirot. That's Da'at of Kedusha, Da'at of holiness. However, there is another aspect of Da'at, which is called Da'at of Klippa, Da'at of unholiness. The Da'at of unholiness attempts to block any influence from Chokhmah and Bina on the other Sfirot. That's what it does, and that's what Amalek is all about. Amalek is the intent to block any revelation from the highest Sfirot into the lowest Sfirot. In other words, basically, what Amalek does is he acts as a fake channel to channel everything that's coming from Chokhmah and Bina into impurity, into unholiness. So what he does is he takes concepts in holiness, he takes the flow from holiness, which is supposed to go into the holy Sfirot, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, etc., the other Sfirot, and he channels it off and siphons it off into unholy purposes. Now, one of the, I see there's a question, 1 second, let me see. I'm not sure what you were referring to, Ernest. I just saw the message now. Watering the flowers, not the weeds. Not sure if that referred to the previous things or not. In any event, let me come back to that at the end. Perhaps you could ask the question and we'll see what it was that you were talking about. In any event, one of the, I'll finish with that there. Stop share for a minute. There is another verse that I want to, there's another verse, I'm sorry, there's another verse that I should show you. Okay, here we go. Okay, now I can share it. Okay, I'm sure you can see the screen now. There's a verse in Psalms 132:13. Psalms 132:13 that says like this: Givocha Hashem beTzion. God chose Tzion. Tzion is essentially Jerusalem. Iva lemoshav lo. He desired it as a dwelling place for him. That's why the temple was in Jerusalem, because that's where the divine presence was revealed, in the temple, in the Holy of Holies. The divine presence was revealed there constantly until the temple was destroyed. Kivocha Hashem b'Tzion, God chose Zion. Iva, he desired. The word Iva means to desire it. Lemoshav lo, for a place for him to dwell, so to speak. As we mentioned before in the first part of this class, that God desired to dwell in the lower world. Where was this dwelling? In the temple, in the Holy of Holies. Now, our sages say that there's a verse actually that is also associated with Amalek, and it says like this. Find it, and I'll show it to you. Here we go. All right, share again. Okay, so it says like this. Vayomer, and he said, Kiyad al case ka. There's a hand on the throne of God. Milchama la Hashem. There's a war against God. There's a war of God. Amalek against Amalek. Midor dor. There's a godly war against Amalek in every generation. Now you will notice, anyone who reads Hebrew will notice that the word case is usually not spelled like that. The word case is usually spelled kisei, kaf samach aleph, kisei. So there's an aleph missing from here. And then the name is only half of the name. The name is usually Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, right? So let me show you on a whiteboard what we are talking about over here. Let me just erase everything over here. How do I do this now? 1 second. Clear all drawings. Yeah, okay. Can you see the whiteboard? Everyone, you can see the whiteboard. Just put in the chat, you can see the whiteboard. Yes, okay, good. Okay, so the word case is written case, like that, kaf samach. It's missing the letter aleph, right? That should be also the name, the divine name. Instead of being Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, it is only Yud, Hey. That's the way it appears in the verse, right? The Vav, Hey is missing. Now, if you take these letters together, the Aleph and the Vav and the Hey, that spells that same word, Iva, right? Iva, he desired. The taiva, the desire of God, was that his presence be revealed in the world. What Amalek does is it prevents that from happening. The hand, Amalek prevents the throne, in other words, so to speak, there with that place where the king sits, and the divine name from being revealed. That's what Amalek does. He prevents the divine will that there should be a revelation of godliness in the world. Now, why doesn't God just like wipe him out? Well, unfortunately, we were the ones that sort of encouraged Amalek, as it usually is, through our own actions, usually not understanding fully what's going on. We were the ones that caused Amalek to grow in strength and to prevent divinity from being revealed in the world. In fact, this is part of the divine plan. The divine plan is that divinity has to be revealed in the world through us. It's not that he reveals. Of course, he can reveal his divinity in the world and, not take no for an answer but he wants us to do that work. Why? Because it is much more precious, not if he does it, but if we do it. It's much more precious to God that we would do it. So the whole concept, therefore, of Amalek is the idea, it's an idea that prevents godliness from being revealed. Now, when it says that you have to erase the memory of Amalek, there's another verse where it talks about this. Here we are. I will show you on the screen, the share screen. I think it's this one. I'm not sure if it is. I'm not sure if I'm sharing the right screen. Just 1 second. Let me make sure that I am. All right. Now it's the only screen, so it'll have to share properly. Okay, good. There you go. So it says over there, erase Amalek from below the heavens, do not forget. So the question was asked, well, if you erase Amalek from under the heavens, if he's completely erased, then how will you remember him? He's not there anymore. He's completely erased. It seems to be a contradiction in terms. No, it's not a contradiction in terms. The concept of Amalek will always exist. The concept of evil always exists. The question is there a manifestation of evil? Is there a manifestation of Amalek? Does Amalek exist within us? Does Amalek exist in the world? Does Amalek exist only as a concept? If it's only as a concept, then it's fine. We know how to prevent that concept from being manifested. But once it's already manifested, then there's a war, right? There's a struggle. There's an actual, can often be even a physical war, as it was in Jewish history. Haman, the famous Haman in the time of Esther, he was a descendant of Amalek. That's why he wanted to destroy the Jewish people. Esther was the one that saved them. But that is what Amalek wants to do. He wants to destroy those who bring down revelation of godliness into the world, and we destroy him by bringing revelation of godliness into the world. But the memory of Amalek, nevertheless, obviously remains. Hope that answers the question. If there's any other questions now, I'll be happy to answer them. Anyone have a question? No? I'll wait a minute if you're writing a question in the chat box. Well, since it's a small class, you can come on, you can open your mic if you want, but okay, it seems that no one's typing the messages. Could be wrong, but it doesn't seem like anyone is. So we'll call it a day and have a wonderful week.
Hi, Rav. It's Hillel. I want to say hello.
Yeah, hi. Okay, hi. Hi there,
I'm just at the people about to start Daf Yomi. But what a concept of the Shinui instead of the Shana. I'm just blown away by that. I think that's so amazing. Finally, I'm beginning to, I understand it just a little bit more. I need to go over. I'm going to watch the recording. That is terrific. Thank you so much.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not sure about a class next week and possibly the week after, because I might be going to Florida to visit some family. I'm not 100% sure yet if I'm going to go, but I'll let you know that whether there will be a class or not. But could be that Wednesday and Thursday next week there won't be a class, and the following week as well. All right, we'll leave it at that. Good night, everybody, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you all.